G'day and welcome to another video on my channel. Today we're looking at this old Winchester rifle. This is the Winchester Model of 1873. This is an original one. This one was made in 1883. Original condition throughout, except for the magazine. The magazine was crushed when I got it, so I had to actually get a aftermarket one, which looks a bit blue and shiny. When I got this rifle, it had a couple of problems. The mainspring was broken, and also it didn't cycle properly. I got an aftermarket mainspring for it and put it in and pulled it apart and cleaned it and did everything. But with this rifle I could just never get it to cycle properly. There was two problems. One was the mainspring seemed to be really heavy, so as you open the action, it was very hard to do it smoothly and evenly just because of the weight of the mainspring. And the other problem was when the lever was pulled down to lift the carrier block up, the carrier block didn't come up high enough, and so the cartridge, as the bolt came forward, the bolt would drive the cartridge into the area just below the chamber, between the chamber and the magazine, and jam the rifle, so it wouldn't actually feed properly. I had trouble working out why that was the case. My initial thought was that there was maybe wear in one of the components in the carrier, or the lever that lifts the carrier up. I'll be pulling it apart. You'll see some footage of me pulling it apart, so you'll see how it works shortly. But I just couldn't work out why the carrier wouldn't come up high enough to do what it's supposed to do. Now I've sort of put this in the too hard basket for quite a while, but just recently I had another look on the net, did a bit of Google searching, and I actually did find a post on a forum from a couple of years ago. It was the Winchester Collectors Forum, and a guy wrote in and described the problem he had with his original 1873 rifle, and it was identical to this. And the expert on the panel, who obviously knew a fair bit about these, he replied that it's not an uncommon problem, and what happens is over the years the actual carrier lifting lever gets slightly bent, probably from people pushing, opening the lever, and the carrier gets to the top of it, it's travelling and they're pushing it, and with that steel from the 1880s, it probably wasn't as hard as steel would be now, and the lever, it only has to bend by a millimetre or two, and that'll be enough to cause the lifter not to come up high enough. Alright, let's have a bit of a closer look at this old Winchester. So let's just have a look at how this works. We'll see if we can just show you how it cycles from start. So as we lower the lever, opens the bolt just like any rifle. So comes out, so as you can imagine, if there was a round in the chamber, the extractor would be pulling that out. But then when we get towards the end of the stroke, it pushes the lifter up. So that lifter is actually smaller than the cartridge across here, so that's actually going to act to eject the previous cartridge, and then the bolt will come forward through the lifter chamber, the next one, and then the end of the throw will just drop that down. Now we're going to look at the problems with this rifle. So as you can see, it seems to cycle alright. Alright, so this rifle is now fired. The hammer's resting on the firing pin. So let's cycle it again. So we've got the block. I've got the lever all the way forward, and you can see where the block is there. Now, if you look at the base of that lifter, you can see it's probably a bit hard to see from that angle. There you go, see that? So it's actually not quite high enough up, and when I close the bolt, if there was a cartridge in there, that would actually push the cartridge into the base of that chamber. Alright, so now let's load a cartridge in, as I said. So anyway, we've got the King's Gate here, so let's push a cartridge in there. Alright, so now that cartridge is actually sitting in the lifter. It's sitting in the tray, in that little sort of tray in the lifter. So let's start our cycling. Oh, this mainspring is really stiff. Alright, so there it is, you can see it there. Okay, so you can see how low the cartridge is sitting? That's as far forward and as far up as the lifter will go. Now if I put my finger underneath there and lift that lifter up, that's where it should be. If we look around here, see how that's sticking up there on the side? Well, looking at photos and watching videos on YouTube of other, both repros and original Winchesters, that should actually be coming up to that point. And then of course, if that was at that point, I can actually let it go and it sort of stays there. When I close the lever, in it goes. There we go, so that's pulled that out now. And if I continue on, normally that would pull it all the way out. It wasn't quite caught by the extractor properly. But anyway, we can tip that out of there and get it out of the way. I think if I had been a bit more exuberant in my got to get it to fall out. There we go. I got it. I've got a fair bit of oil in there. It's quite oily. All right, so you can sort of appreciate the problem there. What we might do is now we'll pull it apart and let's have a look at the innards of it and talk about that. Now the 73, just like its predecessors, the 66, the 1860 Henry and the Volcanic pistols and rifles, all had this system where they had side plates on them. So what we might do is we'll just get a screwdriver and we'll just undo the screw here. Right, I just had the plate on the other side just fell off. So this screw is actually just threaded into the other plate. So we just get that, get the screw out maybe first. Oh, there we go. All right, you see that has like a little lip that actually fits in at the front here. Get my finger out of the way of the head. And you can see the one on the other side will come off now. So there's the threaded hole. You can see the King's Gate is simply spring steel held on with a screw. So here we have the toggle lock system of Henry, the Henry toggle lock system. These toggles actually just sitting there, they often just fall out. In fact, the one on the other side probably will fall out. They can just be pulled out. And anyway, let's give a look here, we'll see how this works. So you can see the bolt coming back. The toggle is broken. So when the rifle fires, you can see that toggle is a straight line. And this is the inherent weakness of this system. Basically, all the pressure from the cartridge goes back through this. It's not actually taken on that pin because that's quite a reasonably tight fit. So that's going to push on the front of that. Apparently, this one's actually surprisingly not really worn. It's actually quite tight, but they can, if they get really worn here, of course, every time it fires, they're going to rattle around. Anyway, the pressure comes through here, pushes on the back and is absorbed into the frame here. So it's an inherently quite a weak system. And if you overload one of these rifles, I know someone that did, who bought got some, I think they had a Uverdi one. Someone gave them some 44 ammo, which they said was all right, and it must have been really hot, and they shot it in a Uverdi 73 and it actually bent the toggles. Alright, I've been trying to film this and it's really difficult to film by yourself because I have to hold these toggles in, otherwise they just fall out, and it takes a fair bit of force to open this lever and cock the hammer. As I said, this mainspring's a little bit stronger than it should be. But anyway, let's give it a go. So, as you can see, so that just make sure it's in view. The links have broken now, and the bolt's coming back and pushing on the hammer. So keep on. I wanted to do that slowly. Hang on. Let's just start again. Start again. As you can see, it kind of once it gets cocked. Okay. All right. So the hammers. Sorry, this is really difficult to film with my primitive filming setup. All right, the hammer's now cocked. This is broken, but the lifter hasn't started lifting yet, as you can see. If you can see there, be careful, these links will fall out. The lifter's still in its lower position, so you know, assuming that's holding a cartridge. Now, when you get to this point, as I start, actually, wrong way. Okay, so you can see this lever here is now starting to raise the lifter, and that's the forward. That's as far forward as the lever goes. So, and you can see the lifters come up there. We've still got the problem, the lifter's not high enough. It needs to come up another few millimeters. Now, just resting that on that ground because it's quite heavy, this rifle. I'll just see if I can just put that down a touch. There we go. Now, because I just want to talk about this. So when the lever comes all the way forward and lifts that up, the reason I just haven't been able to work out why there's a problem. I've always suspected maybe it was just wear in that brass lifter, and so it was just worn in there, and so it was rattling around and wasn't pushing it up enough. And that might be slightly true. And apparently a reasonably common problem with these original rifles is this lever here bends with age. As you can imagine, people slamming the lever forward and this getting to the end of its travel, putting pressure, and the lever ends up bending downwards. And of course, so then it's not actually lifting the lifter up as high as it should. This arm here, when the lever is fully forward, that arm there should be just touching that horizontal part of the frame. In this cutaway photo of a 73 Winchester, you can see that the carrier lever is actually touching that horizontal part of the frame, and you can also see the way the carrier is right up and is protruding out of the top of the receiver, and this is as it should be. So as you can see, there's probably about 3 to 4 mils of clearance there, and that 3 mils, because of the length of the lever, probably equates to 5 or 6 mils of actually lifting of the lifter up. So that's why it's not going up high enough. So what I have to do is dismantle the rifle, take this lever out. Excuse me, my cats are... Hey, stop it! My cats are just having a barney behind me. They always come and watch when I'm doing stuff like this. They're very curious. Anyway, one of them's pregnant and she's just a bit aggro, as pregnant women tend to be. Anyway, back to rifles from cats. Yeah, so I need to take this out, probably clamp it in a vise here somewhere, and then just tap it with a hammer, bending it this way, upwards on the tip. So probably just, you know, I'm going to have to do it very carefully and be careful I don't break it, but probably give it a bit of a tap, and then probably put it back in and try it, and then take it out, and with care hopefully I can get it so it'll just touch, because obviously you don't want it so it's whacking into that frame, because it's just going to bend again. So get it so it's just touching or barely touching that frame at the forward lever stroke, and that should actually fix it, I hope. And that would be really nice to fix it. If I can fix this and get it so it cycles properly, I'll then have a look at getting a lighter mainspring so it's actually a bit easier to use. All right, so the next step is to actually just partially dismantle the rifle to be able to get the lifter arm out. So what we'll do first is we'll remove the two toggles. They just come out, nothing's holding them in. Now there's actually, oops, there's a pin there as well, so remove that so it doesn't get lost. So now we've got the lever, as you can see how the lever spring works there. It goes there, and then as it comes up, locks the lever in place. What we might do is just remove the lever screw. It's a bit difficult working around the camera here. I'll just put it on its side for a second. This way I can actually put pressure on it, so I'm less likely to damage the screw. So we'll just turn it upside down and remove these two springs. So this one's the carrier block spring. We'll just put the screws back in there. This is the lever spring. Again, we'll put the screw back into its spring. Right, now, turn this back over this way. Now that the tension's off it, we should be able to just remove this spring here. Alright, so there we go. So we've removed the lever. Now, we can probably lift that up, wiggle this out. There we go, and the block is going to fall out like that. So there's the block. So the lever goes this way. I actually put some arrows on it before they've wiped off, but obviously we need to actually bend the lever upwards. So I'm going to take it out under the house now to the vise, and I'm going to bend it and then put it back in again. I've got the lifter arm out here now, and while it was in the rifle, I actually, just so I didn't get confused, I actually got a pencil and I actually put, I don't know if you can see that, I put little arrows to show the way that needs to be bent, so once I got out here I wouldn't be confused as to which way it has to be bent. So I've got this in the vise with aluminium jaws, and what I'm now going to do is actually use I've got a piece of 1 inch galvanized pipe. I'm going to put it in there, use it as a lever, because I'm not going to film this because it's a bit of a critical thing. I'd obviously just have to do it till I feel that it's just moved 1 millimeter or so, and then I'll put it back in the rifle and test it. And I'm just going to keep, I won't film the whole thing because it's going to be a long tedious process, but I'm going to do this very carefully, just do it a tiny bit at a time, and until the lift is at the correct height. I've actually bent the lever. I actually did 3 different, I've actually taken it apart and put it back 3 different times. I didn't film it because it's very tedious, and I just wanted to concentrate on bending this lever because I'm a bit paranoid about breaking it. But anyway, even though it looks the same, it's been bent just a couple of millimeters. So let's put it back together again. So if we put the carrier block in, you can see the hole where the lever goes there. Put the carrier block in, put the lever in its hole, and it can sit there. put that lever back in. There we go. Our screw's pretty much lined up there. Right. Let's turn it on the side again. That's got it. Just getting caught a little bit in there. Alright, I'll just check that that's... Alright, so I've put the lever spring and the carrier spring back in. I didn't film that because it's a bit tricky to just get them in the right spot and screw them up. It's not that hard, but anyway, they're in now. So as you can see, that's nicely located there, and it goes up. Now you'll notice now how far up that sticks above the receiver, as it should. That's really nice and definite now. And because I haven't got the toggles there, the bolt's not coming back and forth. So that we're just doing the... Let's put the toggles back in. Alright, now we're going to put the pin in first. I might have to put it from this side actually. That's better. Groove there. Oops, wrong way. That way there. There we go. So, like everything's kind of, they go in quite loosely, but you can see the actual fitment of them is really quite good. Goes that way, I think. That's better. Now, something's going on here. That's... Alright, now everything feels like it's all together. In this screenshot from before the repair, you can see that the carrier lever is a few millimeters below that horizontal section of the frame, and you can also see that you can't actually see the carrier block protruding above the receiver. However, in this photo I took after the repair, you can see that the carrier lifter lever is actually touching that horizontal part of the frame, and you can also see the carrier block protruding from above the frame, and this is how it should be. Alright, so I got the toggles put in place and everything's kind of flush. You've just got to make sure those, especially this carrier spring on this side, it tends to want to pop out to the side when you tighten it up. You've got to kind of make sure you hold it in place. Otherwise you go to put the side cover on, it won't go on. Anyway, with a bit of fiddling around, I'll put that up, I'll hold that side cover in place. It's easier to do this up vertically than horizontally for me. Just got to find the thread in the other side plate. Now, apart from the problem with cycling, or the problem with the lifter not coming up and jamming up, the other problem with this rifle was when I bought it, as I mentioned, it had a broken mainspring. And I bought a mainspring from a place in the US. This is quite a number of years ago now. And it came, and it was much heavier than the original one. And I put it in, and the actual, because as if you look at this here, as you open that, so here's the bolt pushing the hammer back. Now, that first little bit, there's really hardly any spring tension on it. But once you get to this point, you can pull it back there. That other spring was so tight that as that was pushing it back, it was really difficult to push the lever down. So it was very hard to do any sort of smooth lever manipulation. Now, during this journey, while I was doing the research for this, another thing I actually discovered was that looking on, it was actually there's a company in America called Homestead Parts that have parts for lots of old rifles. And on their parts list for original parts, it actually lists the mainspring, and it actually says that the mainspring is the same for models 73, 92 and 94. They're all the same, which I wasn't aware of. So I've actually I used to muck around with the 92s a little bit, and I've got a box of 92 parts. Now these are some parts from a 92 Winchester that I've got in my parts box. And there's an original mainspring for an 1892 Winchester. Take off the tang screw here, and the tang screw, the one that goes through here into the action, and there's a wood screw just there. So in the corner of the there's a wood screw there. And then with care you can actually pull the stock off, and then you can actually undo the, there's actually a tension screw, and then the screw that actually screws into the spring itself just comes from under here. You can see them there, that's the spring and that's the tension spring. So I just undid the tension spring, and I was actually able to, even without actually taking the tang out of the rifle, I was able to undo that so that the spring was loose, and then just unhook it off the stirrup on the back of the hammer and hook the new spring on and fit it. And in conjunction with fixing the carrier, that's made an enormous difference. Now that it's got a fairly light and high quality Winchester made spring in it, I'm just trying to get this so that I can do a bit of demo, but you can see it's not that hard to cock that hammer, but you know, still got plenty of momentum to fire the firing pin. But the beauty is, you know, you can do just really smooth now, really easy to manipulate, both because the carrier is not jamming and the mainspring's looser. And if you look over here, can we see that? Yeah. So you look over here. So if we look at the bottom here now, this is as it should be. This is pretty much flush with the bottom of the receiver, the bottom of the breech block, and on full extension of the lever and raising of the block, you can see the block is sticking up about, it's actually a bit more at the back of the front, but it's sticking up about 5 mils or something like that. And looking at photos and things, that's actually as it should be. The other thing to look at is actually the way that the two springs that we took out in here, one of them's a lever spring and one of them's a carrier spring, and both of them actually just go into little notches in their respective parts. So what the carrier spring does is, if we look at this, leave the lever, so the lever's sort of open but not impinging on that. I can push that up. Get the bolt. Let's try that again. We'll just get the bolt out of the way. See that? See, so that's actually now the carrier spring has gone into its notch, and that's actually holding that carrier in place where it should be. So that's actually, before the lever didn't actually lift it up to that point, and then as the carrier lever pushes it down, again it goes down, and then the spring goes into the second notch, and that holds it in place down there. Now if we do the same with the lever, the spring on the lever, as the lever comes back, see that last spring there is actually being caused by the lever spring locking into its notch and actually holding the lever in place. So if your lever if you have a problem with the lever spring, your lever will become floppy and not be obviously in, where it should be at any given part of the cycle. And if your carrier spring has a problem, then the carrier will be floppy. So I've put the rifle back together again with its repaired lifter lever, and now we're going to do a function test. So we'll might just put 5 in, I think. As you open the lever, you can see the cartridge sitting in the bottom of the cartridge lifter. So there we are, up. Now let's have a look at that. Can you see the chamber there? It's just a bit awkward to hold this. Let's go in. Look at that. There we go. We've got to wait for that to go down. And then next one. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Let's try that again. Oops. There we go. Still one in there. And that's the end. There you can see, if I push that down, make the lever go down. There we go, you can see the magazine follower. So the magazine's now empty again. So as you can see, I was doing that fairly slowly for the camera, and it's a bit awkward because I'm sort of on the side, but that is cycling perfectly now. So there we have it, another successful firearm repair. I took this rifle out to the range on the weekend, and I put 30 rounds, 32 rounds actually, I think. Those are all the cases I had at the time. I've ordered some more now through it, and it cycled perfectly. It's a very heavy rifle, but bang, 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 bang. As you can see, cycles nice and smoothly, easily. Fired every round, no problem. Cycled every round, no problem. And there's even, I was only shooting at 25 metres, but even with just general shooting without sort of aiming too carefully, the 30 rounds tore a ragged fist-sized hole in the middle of the target. So, so I'm looking forward to getting this out to some lever action. We have lever action match here. They actually have a classic caliber sections. So anyway, if you enjoyed this sort of content, please feel free to subscribe to my channel and push the like button. And until next time, thanks for watching.